Happy Sabbath, everyone. It's been a stressful week, I'm sure. Have you all seen the reports of last evening when the status went up? Suddenly, Maggie Mee is now a sought-after commodity. And so today's title of the sermon is considered No Bull. I will tell you why. But thanks, Raymond, for the scripture reading. And I just wanted to say something about youth. I think nothing empowers and energizes the church more than seeing the youth ministry move. Why? I was thinking about that this morning. And perhaps it's because the youth is the future of the church. And when you see the future of your church engage, you know the church has a bright future. So more than just listening to their plans, I encourage all of us, Fabriana, we might not just help you, we might join you in your activities. Okay, so before I start, today's sermon will be more lecture style. I saw Natasha, she's like, today's sermon will be more lecture style. I want to go over something that is quite basic, but I have learned not to assume. And so before I start, I invite everyone to pray with me. Shall we pray? Our dear Heavenly Father, in this time of trouble, Lord, we once again want to reaffirm that our hope is built on nothing less, Lord, than you. And so I ask that on this special day, Lord, for the rest of this special day, especially the next few moments, that you will speak to us, Lord, that you will give us comfort, you will give us hope, and you will reassure us. Father, I pray that the rumblings that come out from my mouth, Lord, will be telegraphed by your Spirit into our hearts. And may we listen and receive your message of love. Thank you so much. In your most precious name I pray. Amen. Okay, so last sermon, 1 month flew by in such a short time. I shared about my journey to the West. You guys know, if you don't know, you can catch it on our church website, in our YouTube. And we talk about, this is a series, and we talk about how the Israelites, their journey through the wilderness could have taken 11 days. If they just left, crossed the Red Sea, and they walk, they would have reached the land of Canaan 11 days. But it took them 40 years as a whole. For a whole group of a whole generation, they left Egypt, but they never entered the Promised Land. And if you study and you read, you will find that there was only one reason. It was they were not ready. They chose not to be ready. Now, what does it mean to be not ready? It means that they failed to see God for who He really was. And if you came for our 10 days of prayer for in the beginning of January, this year is a little special. Normally, for 10 days, we have one urgent need that we can pray for all 10 days. These 10 days, you don't even have 10 days to pray for catastrophe that has happened. We started praying for the volcano eruption in Philippines, and then after that, there was a locust swarm in Kenya, and then on that same day, the coronavirus had an outbreak. And so in that 10 days, we see how we move. We do not even have the attention that we need to handle one. What's more, 3. And And so, in 1989, there was a company called ProNav that started off, and they sold their first GPS for US $2,500. That was their first product. The company was called ProNav, and later on, we know this company as Garmin. Now, Garmin became almost a required thing that you needed in your car, right? People started buying Garmins. Before that, you had Street Directory, and then there was this website that was on paper, so you had to print all your instructions out. I'm not sure whether you guys remembered, but Garmin changed the world. They were the first to put a computerized GPS in your car. And then something happened within 10 years. It was called the iPhone. The iPhone came out, multi-touch, and with the iPhone came out the App Store. And with the App Store, suddenly Google started with the rise, and then we have Android and all that. But with the mobile phone becoming a thing, suddenly, in a span of 4 years, 5 years, this device that was almost required in every single automobile became obsolete in 5 years. And this company has gone through a transformation, but we'll talk more about that later. And all you need today is $10. You don't need to spend a few $100 buying a Garmin. You don't need to spend US dollar $2,500 for the first GPS. All you need is $10 to buy a phone holder in your car. That's all you need for GPS right now. And your phone, literally, actually, I think in the next 10 years, the head unit of your car will become obsolete because your music comes from your phone. All you need is a Bluetooth receiver, and your map, everything is on your mobile phone. And so, I realized a good chunk of our life in church is like Garmin, especially in Singapore. Things change so fast. As soon as you establish a product that you think is good enough, it starts becoming obsolete. And how much, the question is, how much of our Christian walk is like that? As soon as you discover something, it feels like you start getting the returns. Do some of you feel that? No? Well, when I was in school, I stumbled my first week, right? I told you about the crazy first week. But at the end of the first week, I stumbled upon this poster. I'm not sure whether you know who they are. That's Ty Gibson and David Estrick. Ty Gibson is, I think, my favorite Adventist speaker to date. And I saw their poster. Before going to Andrews, I wanted to sign up for a class at Arise in Australia, but I decided no. And so this time, they were actually doing it in school. The problem was, it's not free, okay? It was extra, it was out of curriculum, and you had to sacrifice 8 hours on Sabbath and 8 hours on Sunday. So 2 days intensive. You go through 8 lectures and back to back. And so it was crazy, and then we had all the schoolwork. And so as a student, it was difficult for me, 150 US dollars. Should I spend 150 US dollars to spend 16 hours in Christian lectures and then have to read 300 pages more on Sunday night to finish my assignment? It was tough. To make it even tougher, Tosca is here today. There is this amazing place, 15 minutes from school. This supermarket, it looks like a supermarket. It looks like a really rundown place. If you drive to the car park, you will see quite a lot of Hispanics there. And then you wonder what kind of trade is going on in the car park because it looks really rundown. And if you walk in, you will see a supermarket. And if you continue to walk through the supermarket, what you will be greeted with is, do you have it? A counter that sells the best Mexican food you can ever find. And this place is called none other than La Perla. we started going there once a week after finding out about this special place. And this is the review from Yelp. This is what drove me to the place. I saw this picture of their burrito, and it says, now this is what a burrito is supposed to look like. None of that mostly lettuce bitterness they tried to pass off before. And so as we went, this burrito cost $6. And so I did some calculations. $6 is 20. If I spend 150 US dollars, I can buy 25 burritos. Really delicious burritos. And so it was tough for me. But something changed. They said, Andrew's students now get 50% discount on Arise. It's like, okay, 12 and a half burritos makes more opportunity costs. So I signed up, and I went in, and the course started, and the first slide, I still remember, that Ty Gibson shared was this. The most miserable person is an Adventist. Something, okay? He shared something. What do you think was in the blank? Anyone? No idea? Is it the most miserable person is an Adventist on washing team duty? Is that the fact for our church? That's the most miserable person. Not really. I was doing this, I was laughing. I think it's the most miserable person an Adventist on Sabbath school, chairperson, worship leader, preaching, cooking, washing, sundown worship duty, all on the same Sabbath. It's happened, I think. But what he shared made me start to think. The most miserable person is an Adventist without a relationship with God. Why? I agree to a large certain extent. You know, keeping the Sabbath can be a torture if you don't love God. You can't work. You technically cannot have all the fun that you like, all the activities that you like to do during the week. You can't buy. You cannot talk about all the other things that you like to talk about. And so it can be a torture. How about, let's not talk about vegetarian. Let's just talk about diet. Normal Adventist diet. If you don't like God, the Adventist diet is a constraint, right? Now, the things I like to eat, or used to like to eat, I cannot eat anymore. How about tithing? Instead of getting a whole, now I am only left with 90%. Anything else? How about our time? Instead of 7 days a week, it seems now I have 6. And the supermarket, everyone is buying all the food, the rice and the Maggi mee. I'm here. I can't go to the supermarket because they decided to up the level to orange right when Sabbath hit. How? Tough choices. And that is an Adventist if you don't have a relationship with God. And so today's text, I want to point us to this. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 16 to 19. We've read it just now. It says that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you be rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and the length and the height and the depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. The inner man. So far, everything we've talked about is on the outer man. Your habits, your actions, your contribution, your work, your ministry. But what Paul is talking about right here, he's talking about connecting with the Spirit so that our inner being, our heart, and our mind can be rooted and grounded in love. Sounds simple. I know all of you are like, oh, okay, I think I know where this is going. But as I started to, as I went to school, actually, the first class that we had to go through was, how do I build a relationship with God? And as I talk to some people, somehow I have this suspicion that all of us know we need to have a strong relationship with God, right? That much is done. But how do we make sure our relationship is strong? How do we build a strong relationship with God? I think today, for the rest of my sermon, I'm just going to talk about different tips to build a relationship with God. So if you're hearing this for the don't know how many times, hear it one more time. Maybe the Spirit's prompting you to start a new habit. But going into seminary, now this is the group of friends that I have, the whole group. We started a care group that meets at a really unearthly time, because on Friday evenings, we were involved in Vespers, we had to help in the churches, and so care group only started after the Vespers ended. And it's a really diverse group. You have people from, I'm the only Asian, and then you have California, Maryland, Oregon, you have from Cuba, you have someone from El Salvador, you have from Texas, and so this was the group. This was literally my church family, so to say, for the 4 months that I was there. And I still remember, one of them was in class with me. And after going through what I'm about to share with you guys for the rest of the sermon, he had a panic attack. And this is seminary, so these guys are like, I went to seminary thinking, everyone should have their spiritual paradigm all set. But one of them had a panic attack, and he had to lie on the floor. Right after class, he's like, Lionel, I don't dare to move. And I was like, okay, are you okay? And he had tears flowing down his eyes. And all he says, why did no one tell me the things that I just learned today about God? And we were just talking how to build a relationship with God. And he had a panic attack. And he said, it's like I have to get to know God all over again. And it was at the moment I realized, could it be that we go through life and we can be active in church, and we can do all that. We can even recite memory verse. We can even read the Bible. We can pray, and yet not have a strong relationship with God. Is it possible? Well, as I share, you be the judge for your own walk with God. So I'm going to go really fast so I don't waste any time. I'm going to share with you just 2 principles, okay, and 4 action steps. That's it. The first principle is this. A growing relationship is always intentional, okay? You can meet God by coincidence from your perspective, but God is always intentional. But from our perspective, you can stumble into discovering God. Like my dad, when he came here to work, he stumbled across a VOP leaflet flyer that was on the floor. Someone threw it, and he's like, I'm joining, and then he became Adventist, and that's why I'm here. Coincidence, right? Walk down the street, you can discover God by coincidence, but you can never grow a relationship out of coincidence. It is always intentional. Okay? And some of you might think, hey, so you're saying that there's action steps to growing a relationship with God. Doesn't that sound very legalistic? Like I have to do a set of activities before I have a relationship with God. Relationships is about being. It's about feeling. It's about just getting that connection, and then I have it. Well, it is, and is not. Anyone in a marriage will tell you that it takes intentional work. Anyone that is dating will know that you might have stumbled into your significant other by coincidence, but it took you intentional effort to win her heart and to continue to win her heart. And after you get married, it takes you intentional effort to stay out of hot soup, to not get in trouble when you don't do your housework, right? Did someone say amen? Okay. See, the thing about God is this. God is against earning. You don't get to earn God's love. You don't get to earn salvation. But God is not against effort. Ask any parent and you will know. You get love. The child gets love from the parent just because you are a child. But effort is something special. If you put effort, any parent, like if I see my son trying to learn something, it moves my heart. So effort is different. You don't put in effort to earn, but you put in effort as a relational dynamic. Does this make sense? So it's not legalistic, huh? Okay. Principle 2. Attention and distractions are mutually exclusive. What does that mean? It means the best way to put it is when I was younger, I used to be a semi-competitive computer gamer. I think some of you know this. I used to play World of Warcraft a lot, and up to 18 hours a day. And we were always pushing for server first. I'm not sure whether, I think the youth understand what I'm saying. And we were pushing. Back in that day, esports was not a thing, and so it was just a horrible habit to have. And at that same time, I was actually dating Trisha. And so the biggest complaint she would have is, you don't give me enough attention. And so my solution was, then you play with me. And that did not work. And the same does not work with your relationship with God. So doing ministry with God is fine, up to the point that it distracts you from God. Then it stops building a relationship. And so attention and distractions, they are mutually exclusive. You can't be distracted and say, I'm giving you attention. If you're giving attention, it means you're not distracted. Okay? They both cannot exist at the same time. And so with these two principles, there's actually just two action steps. Okay, how do you make sure you have attention and distraction? Very simple. Disengage to engage. You need to disengage from the activities we are doing and you're doing to engage with God, right? And so, how do you disengage? Simple. 2 steps. The first to disengage is get alone. In Luke chapter 5, verse 16, it says, but he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. In Singapore, that is extremely hard. There is almost no place that you can really be alone. And so how do we circumnavigate this? Well, the solution is easy. Find a time when you cannot be disturbed. So for me, it's early in the morning. For some of you, it could be late in the evening. I'm not joking. For some of you, based on your schedule, maybe afternoons are the best because you can control your time. Whatever it is get alone, right? And the problem with us not getting alone, and we struggle with coming to a relationship with God and connecting during our quiet time is this. We actually don't follow principle number 1, which is the growing relationship requires us to be intentional. And so if you're not willing to disengage, then the honest truth that you might have to ask yourself is, am I intentional about my relationship with God? Or do I want to continue to rely on circumstance or coincidence to help me grow? So for me, I used to sleep at 2 a.m. Right? I like sleep at 2 a.m. And when I first started doing my quiet time, and this is something that I struggled. How do you do quiet time at 6 a.m. when you sleep at 2 a.m.? You read the Bible and you feel like you're going to fall asleep sometimes. And this takes intentionality. If you want to wake up early to meet God, you have to make sure you sleep early. And so this requires us to intentionally move our habits around. It doesn't happen out of thin air. And so if it's evening, make sure you're not rushing, and then you're just about to fall asleep, and then at 11 p.m. you're like, okay, God, it's time for a quiet time. Cook, you don't even make it past the first minute and you fall asleep on your bed. Right? So be intentional. When you want to do these action steps, make sure you have the resources and the energy to continue to go on. Step 2, unplug. What does unplug mean? For me, unplugging is interesting. I listen to music. Some of you can unplug straight away, but unplugging just means do not walk into quiet time with God with everything on your mind. You might have just finished work, and for I take longer to unplug. I'm still thinking about everything. I'm still thinking about next week's church business meeting, and then I go in, I'm like, okay, God, let's spend time. But my head, I am lost in work still. And so for me, music is the best. I just play 3 songs and I sing along, and for some reason, I tune into a mode where I'm ready to meet God. Maybe that's why for our church liturgy, we sing songs first. Right? Is to guide us, is to guide our mind. So the same way, when you do quiet time, unplug. Some of you listen to music, go ahead, that's fine. But what you want to do is unplug so that you can be silent, so that you can start reflecting. And so in summary, disengage, get alone, and unplug. Simple enough? Now, next, how do we engage? Also 2 steps. And this is very, very, very simple. You all know this at the back of your head. It's called read the Bible and pray. Okay? Now, the problem, and this is actually where I want to spend more time with, is this is what our reading Bible and our prayer looks like. We open the Bible, and we are the people of the Word, right? And so we study the Bible, we look at it, we try to comprehend the text. Some of us have tools. We do translations. We try to analyze the passage, try to get the context, try to focus, and the focus is on the verse or the passage. And the goal, what is the goal when you're studying the Bible? The goal of Bible study is to decipher and discover facts. And that is good. I'm not saying don't do it. And we are really, really, really good in that. As I was studying, I was like, whoa, you know, the Bible is written in different structures. There is the parallel panel, there is the chiastic, they are different. The Bible is written in cycles. You will see that the story of Israel going out, the story of Abraham is written in shadows, cycle after cycle after cycle. And we do that, and we study. And in Bible study, imagination is dangerous. You cannot imagine your own facts. You read the Bible, it's like, okay, I'm going to just change, or I think this is my theory, I'm going to change it. Imagination is dangerous when you're studying the Bible, right? You want to be accurate, you want to get what the writer was writing, you want to understand the intention. And prayer, in this context, is mostly request to God. It's mostly routine, and it's formal. It's very formal. Now, what I want to suggest is this. When you want to build, do this as your study, and that is good. But when you want to build a relationship, understand that the Bible is the Word of God. It is God's primary tool, a relational tool that God uses to talk to us. And so, when you're reading, read to spend time with God. Sometimes when I started doing this, I would have to put my pencil down. And so I had a notebook, and every time I read a verse that was interesting, I'll go like, oh, this looks interesting. I want to do some research. I'll actually write it down, and I'll not research until later. I'll just read to talk to God. And what else? The focus of Bible reading is God. It is not on analyzing or understanding the text. So you are reading to spend time with God. And over here, the goal is to listen to God. So when you're reading, you're asking God, what are you trying to say to me? And try doing it. And the last one is interesting. Imagination can be advantageous. And why do I say that? Well, when you imagine yourself in a Bible character, let's say you're reading one of the Gospels and you imagine yourself as Peter. Okay? Imagine yourself as Peter talking to Jesus. Immerse yourself in the text, in the situation. And as you read, if you imagine yourself to be Peter, and Peter was talking to Jesus, and Jesus was talking to him. So what does that mean? That means that indirectly, Jesus was talking to you, and you were talking to Jesus. And so in this point, imagination is actually advantageous. So when you're studying, don't imagine. When you are reading for relationship and connection, imagine. And your prayer is a conversational tool. You don't have to follow a structure. You just need to say what you feel. It's casual. It's like two friends hanging out. And I just want to talk about imagination a little bit more. Some of you, I'm not sure, but for me, I'm a very visual person. And so when I look at the Bible, what's the first thing you see? Words, right? Some of you see words straight away. But I realized reading the Bible was a struggle for me. Because the first thing when I open a book, is I look at the shape of the paragraphs. Because I see shapes first, and diagrams, and then words, and then audio. So that's my struggle, and I have so many books to read, I'm in trouble. I just look at I'm like, why are the borders not symmetrical? Maybe I have a bit of OCD. But so what I used to do was, imagine yourself entering a room. You get to determine how the room looks like. For me, I have an island floating in the sky over the sea. I have a house with a giant tree, and I have a swing that's big enough for two people. And every time I do my quiet time, after listening to the music, I will just imagine myself entering this special place, right? And in Psalms, David talks about it. He calls it the secret place. And in this secret place, why is it secret? It is a secret because only two people can enter this place. One is you, and the second is God. No one else. And so I'm in my secret place. And time after time as I read, somehow you get this sense that God is there with you. And sometimes you get to lead the agenda. Sometimes He gets to lead the agenda. And as you read, sometimes He says things that you wish you didn't come into the secret place. He digs out stuff that you don't want to hear, but sometimes you get to share everything, and He quietly listens. And sometimes nothing is said between both of us. But in my head, we are just sitting down, staring into the sea, and the company we have with each other is more than enough for the day. And so that is how you build a relationship with God. Now you guys know, I'm secretly a shoe person. And so as I was doing my research, I came across this company called Nobu. What a weird brand, right? And so I checked. And in the website of Nobu says this: Nobu is a footwear and apparel accessory brand for people who train hard and don't believe in excuses. If you think gimmicks in your shoe make you a better athlete, Nobu is not for you. Our gear will not make you fitter. The only thing that will make you fitter is you. And similarly, as I share this, my number one concern is this: the tools that you learn and we pick up as Adventists, the Sabbath school guide that we read will not give you a closer relationship with God. The only thing that can give you a closer relationship with God is your willingness and your intentionality to connect with God. The tools just help you. The running shoes just help you run. But if you buy running shoes and you don't run, you will never be fit, right? I know that because I buy a lot of running shoes when I don't run. And so God is always prepared to meet you. God is always willing to build a relationship with us. The question is, are we willing to build a relationship with Him? See, in order to be ready in the wilderness, the Israelites had to reinvent their whole paradigm. They had to stop living in Egypt and stop seeing God as just another God, as an Egyptian God. But yet, they failed to transit, and they still saw God as an angry God, a God that they couldn't connect with, and only through Moses, they saw God as His providence was never enough, and they wanted to be slaves again. If you read the story, it's crazy. God gave them manna, God brought them out, and they were telling Moses, can you bring us back to Egypt? Because I don't like the freedom that I have. And so if we are not careful, then we can be in church, and all we want is to go back to Egypt. Isn't that how the Sabbath feels sometimes? And so like Garmin had to reinvent themselves. Today, if you look at their company profile, they no longer sell the GPS. They provide GPSs for aeroplanes and all the critical vehicles. But they have moved into fitness. They were the first to put a heart tracker on the wrist. And I think some of you have smartwatches now. They have reinvented their company from a consumer GPS to smartwatches and other things. And they continue, and they won an innovative award, I think last year or the year before, even after losing their bigger share. And so if Maranatha wants to continue to be relevant in today's age especially, I think with all that is going around us, it's scary, isn't it? If you cannot put your trust in God, then what can we really put our trust in? You have money to buy masks, doesn't mean you can get masks. I tried to buy a thermometer. I went to Guardian, and it was the first time in my life I can see a whole rack empty, right? And it was not cheap. Everyone just buys. And now that craze is moving to the supermarket. What next if things get worse? If our hope is not on Christ, we are in trouble. And so, the most miserable person is an Adventist without a relationship with God. But in closing, I promise you it'll be short. In closing, in Ephesians 19, it says, "And to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God." Conversely, then an Adventist with a relationship with God is the most fulfilled person. Whether you want to be miserable or fulfilled, it just lies on one thing. How connected are you with God? And so this is my prayer for all of us. It's simple, but I have this suspicion that some of us, that secret place that you meet God in, if you were to walk in, you would smell a musty smell. Or you would see that nothing is maintained in that place. Or maybe the Bible in your secret place has started to turn dusty. Or perhaps there is a lot of tools and responsibility. Your church duty roster is inside the secret place. And everything but what it's supposed to be. And so this is my prayer. May we all find joy daily with Christ in this secret place. And when we come to church, despite all the duties, may we still say we are the most fulfilled because Christ has filled us. Amen.